Today's program features.
Glad to be here. Glad to share what we're doing at DFW Airport, not only DFW Airport, beyond, like we mentioned, the consortium. So let's talk about Little Ranch DFW Airport. There's our little ranch, 17,000 and change acres. Size of the city of Manhattan, a little bit over 50%, probably maybe closer to 60% of it is developed, which means a lot of urban landscape. But we also have a lot of other habitats, woodlands, waterways, open grasslands, things like that. And our developed lands include, so I saw a lot of hands raised when we talked about who has flown into or out of DFW Airport. A lot of area to taxi around in too, right? 7 active runways, a lot of concrete out there, a lot of buildings. And this is important in that all of this habitat has the potential to support wildlife. Okay. Now the FAA regulates Part 139 airports, which are large airports that have regular flights of a certain seat size or higher on a daily basis. So that's a Part 139 airport. The FAA regulates these airports, and they regulate safety issues at these airports. Part of the safety issue is wildlife, because wildlife, when it interacts or collides with the plane, can cause hazards. So they have a number of things that they do. Part 139.337 addresses these hazards and what airports are required to do to address them and mitigate them. They also have advisory circulars. DFW Airport employs 2 full-time staff, wildlife staff. In addition to, we work with our operations folks. Believe me, it's not just 2 people. There's a lot of other folks that we work with for our program to implement these safety practices. But we also try to go above and beyond these safety practices to implement our own best practices. The FAA requires that Part 139 airports conduct a year-long wildlife hazard assessment. We are currently in our 3rd round of wildlife hazard assessments. I think our first one was done in 2004 before I got to the airport. We're in our 3rd round. We just started it this past May. It's a year-long assessment of strikes, activity, hazards, attractants, etc. From that, we build a wildlife hazard management plan, which says, what are you going to do about that stuff? If you identified hazards, if you had strikes, if you had activity, what are you going to do about it? From that plan, we build our program. The program is, this is boots on the ground. Here's what we're going to do on a daily basis. Here's what we're going to do as issues arise. Okay, our location, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, makes this a big challenge. We are under a major migratory pathways. Is anybody familiar with a migratory path for birds? Right. Birds travel along these paths. There are 4 major ones in the U.S. They travel along these paths from their nesting to their wintering grounds. We're under a major migratory path, which means that not only do we have the resident species that live here and don't really go too far, but we also have pelicans, hummingbirds, all different kinds of shorebirds and things that might travel this path and might look at the airport and look at those beautiful green grounds and see some of these waterways and say, hey, I want to stop there. It's always a challenge, always very interesting. We have documented well over 100 species of birds in particular, but in addition to that, we have all kinds of terrestrials, mammals, reptiles, amphibians, insects, all kinds of things documented at the airport, which makes it a fun challenge. It's a lot of fun. There's just some more of our diversity, and we're looking at these things, and we see all this diversity, but really the diversity in the types of challenges that we really want to focus on are the high priority ones. Things like large birds and flocking birds. Large birds and flocking birds means more density, which means if it should interact with an aircraft, more potential for hazard. But our most common species include mourning doves, rock pigeons. We all know these guys. Yeah, I know. Our favorites, right? Meadowlarks, yeah, grackles. Blackbirds, sandpipers, and various raptors. And those things also change seasonally. I saw my first Swainson's hawk yesterday. A Swainson's hawk is a large red-tailed hawk-type bird, and I saw my first one yesterday. They'll stick around through the summer. Not much of an issue, thankfully, and I'm going to knock on wood on that one and not say anymore. Okay, so what do we do about this wildlife? Why do we care? What are we going to do about it? It can interact with aircraft, and we do our best to prevent it. Here's my favorite. I'd love it if birds could read. If only they could say, if only we could put out signs and say, hey, there's an active runway here or a taxiway, don't cross. They can't. That wouldn't even help in all instances because aircraft don't stay on the ground, right? They're meant to fly. So, unfortunately, I haven't been able to have any of the airlines take me up on that paint job, but maybe someday in the future. If anybody's got any pull with the airlines, let's see what we can do about this. So those two options are not options. So what do we do at the airport? We rely absolutely on partnerships. I mentioned the 2 wildlife inspectors and our airfield operations folks. That's 35 to 40 people. That doesn't cut it. We have to have our partnerships because of all the different habitats, the urban environment, etc. So we work very closely with our energy, transportation, and asset management department for preventive measures. What we want to do is prevent habitat from attracting wildlife to the extent possible. I love wildlife. I got into this never thinking that I would be using my knowledge to do the exact opposite of what I was educated for, which is to attract wildlife and enhance it and build populations. My job is the opposite. And we absolutely rely on our ETAM department, Energy, Transportation, and Asset Management, our grounds crews to mow at specific grass heights. And I'll talk a little bit about our airfield maintenance program here in a short while. We also have a pavements crew within that same department who ensure that terrestrial animals aren't able to get under fences. If there's any kind of breach in a fence, they fix it. We have a concrete mow strip underneath our 6-foot-tall barbed wire fences that prevent animals from getting onto our airfield, which is that area that aircraft land, take off, and taxi. And things like holes or things like pavement issues where groundwater collects after last night's rains and hails and things, low areas on our airfield will collect water. We want to make sure that those areas are cleared off, and if possible, what can we do in an infrastructure basis to make sure that water is draining off very quickly? And the FAA actually has for stormwater, I'll talk about this, I think, coming up soon, not yet next, but they also have criteria that they require us to follow. We work very closely with our design groups to ensure that we are appropriately designing the airport and that all aspects of future planning include thinking about wildlife. Thinking about what kind of turf are you going to put down? What kind of landscape are these contractors going to plant? Live oak trees are a thing of the past, and I'll explain a little bit in reference to our falconry. Things that really involve a wildlife awareness. We work very closely with our planning department. And as I talk about partnerships, does this thing have a pointer on it? Which one do I point? On the last bullet there, we have looped in not only our environmental department, but AgriLife from Texas A&M University and a contracted botanist to ensure that it's not just us with the knowledge base. We're bringing in subject matter experts from all different kinds of fields. Planning, we've got a plant list, as I mentioned. Planning documents are reviewed. We do things like put out signs reminding people at Founders Plaza, don't feed the birds. The structures at Founders Plaza, has anybody been to Founders Plaza? The observatory? Right. If you look up at the shelters up there, the structures are rounded, much less attractive to birds for perching. And you're probably happier when you're having lunch underneath them too, to not have birds over you. Our environmental affairs department work very closely with them to make sure that post-planting, after construction, that the right vegetation types were planted, that the vegetation took hold and is established prior to releasing an area back to a contractor. There's airfield operations. We work very, very closely with them. They work very closely with us to not only document, but report, disperse all kinds of things, in addition to all of their other duties that they conduct on a daily basis. Wildlife is out there too. So they are prepared with noisy things that disperse birds away, and I'm sure they have a lot of fun with it too, little handheld pyrotechnics and stuff. We train, Hannah and I, she's my wildlife inspector, we do train these airfield staff in wildlife identification to make sure that they understand what species they are dispersing. They are aware of threatened and endangered species. They're aware of these ponding issues and certain vegetation types to be watching for, and they report and document. We all work very closely. Aviation real estate, I mentioned all of those urban areas. Those urban areas, the tenants have break areas. The break areas are often outside. If we have uncovered trash cans, if we have overflowing trash cans, if they leave their scraps out for birds, that's not good. So we inspect every facility at our airport property on a monthly basis. And we work very closely with aviation real estate to ensure that they're aware if there is a non-compliance issue, that they reach out to the tenant and inform them that this is not in compliance with our wildlife hazard management plan. They do a very good job, typically, of keeping their areas cleaned up. We work very closely with other partners, our airline partners, to ensure that we're collecting. Anybody here ever hear of the word snarge? No? Yes, you have? No? Okay. After today, you can't say that. No, you haven't. Snarge is the term that the Smithsonian Institute's Feather and DNA Lab has come up with for snot and garbage, the stuff that's left on an aircraft after it hits wildlife. We can leave it there and just write a report and say an aircraft hit something and we don't know what it is, or we can collect that snot and garbage and try to figure out what it was. If we can figure out what it was, we have a knowledge base to identify potential hazards. If we can identify those, we can do something about them. So we work very closely with our airline partners to collect that snarge, send it to us. We will write that report to the National Wildlife Strike Database. Off it goes to them, to the Smithsonian Feather and DNA Lab. We get the ID back, and now we've got better knowledge about the things that are out there that the aircraft are striking. It's important to know if we're striking seed eaters or insect eaters or raptors, because then we can identify what perhaps they're being attracted to. Other partnerships, we work very, very closely with a lot of off-DFW, non-departmental partners. I just mentioned two of them, the Smithsonian and the FAA, the National Wildlife Strike Database. We are members of the consortium. We have a falconry contract, a botanist contract. We've worked with avian radar and others for our program, and I'm going to talk about two of my favorites, and there's the falconry program. If you've traveled into or out of DFW Airport, have you noticed those beautiful trees in the terminal areas and the parking areas? Yeah? Have you noticed? Yeah, they're green all year long, and that's the reason that they were selected and planted there. It's because they provide green beauty throughout the year, and that means wintertime too. Unfortunately, grackles love this stuff. They love to congregate in those trees in the wintertime because of that situation. So this is what they look like. There are the live oak trees. There's the terminal areas. 3 of our 4 terminals have this situation, and over the years, these grackles, starlings, other blackbirds, cowbirds have learned and brought their offspring, who've brought their offspring, that these live oak trees will provide safety, comfort, warmth, protection in the wintertime. So they came to the airport's live oak trees in the thousands, and no matter what we did to address them, it didn't work. We tried propane cannons, we tried noisemakers, we tried compressed air, we tried putting fake snakes in the trees. Yeah. Thankfully, I wasn't the one climbing those trees to do that. So we tried all these things, but they were just short-term solutions. Birds are not stupid. You know, we think of the term bird brain. They're not stupid. It doesn't take them long before they figure out that that's not a real thing, or that person that has that compressed air has left, and now I can come back, and they're not going to bother me until tomorrow. They're not dumb. So we've tried everything, and no matter what we did, really wasn't working. This is an issue here on the bottom right-hand corner called staging. These birds were coming from all over to come to the terminal areas. And coming from all over means that they're crossing over runways and taxiways and flight paths to get to those live oak trees. Introduce Roger and his buddy Cujo. Cujo is the little guy sitting on his hand. We ran into Roger because Roger approached us and said, hey, I noticed he was an airline employee, and he said, hey, I noticed this issue going on over here. I think I can help you. And he really did. Cujo has enough ambient light, and you can kind of see that ambient light. He has enough ambient light at night to know and hear and see movement in those trees. Cujo was released to a group of flocking blackbirds, and these flocking blackbirds didn't like that very much because they realized, that this is a predator in their midst, a predator that doesn't take no for an answer and is in it for business. So we tried this as a beta test at first, and it seemed to be very safe and effective, and this was on the parking side, the terminal, the land side of the terminal. So we were, of course, aware of and watchful for, but we didn't really have high concerns about this activity going over to the ramp sides and interfering with aircraft. So after we figured out it was all going to be safe, we went into a full-blown program. 4 falconers staged themselves in the parking lots of all of our terminals, and we're ready for those blackbirds. We started off in Terminal B, and this was back in 2009. We started off in Terminal B. Cujo was released. The blackbirds didn't like it at all, so they went over to Terminal A, and guess what? There's a falconer there with another Cujo type waiting for them. This went on for 9 nights. In a matter of 9 nights, the work that we had done over the past 30 years to try to mitigate this situation was gone. And this situation has not returned in these numbers since then. Tens of thousands of birds have not returned. They try, handfuls of them. This is that exact same terminal, 9 nights later, taken at the exact same time, and this situation has not returned. So Cujo and his buddies, Grim and Reaper and whoever else. Yeah. I'm serious. They're 2 brother birds, Grim and Reaper. So they've really done a great job. This has been one of the most gratifying things that we have done. Not only the time and effort it takes to go out every night and try to get after these birds and chase them away, the customer service issues for the cars, people walking under the trees, but on top, the biggest one, the safety issues of these birds crossing over our airfield. We've been able to pretty much mitigate it totally. Every now and then, and birds have memories. I know they do. Every now and then, a couple hundred will try to come back. We let them build up just a little bit so that the raptors will have success in their hunt. It takes about once, and that's it. It's not this 9-night effort anymore. They remember. Okay, a botanist contract. Let's talk about our botanist contract. This is my second, maybe second most favorite. Back in 2014, we decided that we'd had enough of some bird activity that just would not disperse. We had pigeons flocking on areas of our airfield on a consistent daily basis, no matter what we did to try to mitigate it. These birds were returning onto certain areas of our airfield, and again, the noisy stuff was not working. So let me talk about something else real quick. This is what they are, the pigeons that we saw the pictures of. Birds don't expend energy without some kind of reward or reason, and they were expending energy, so we knew there was something on our airfield that they were coming for. We realized it was summertime only activity. In the hot summer months, like right now, they'd start building up, but when things cooled down, September, October, they disappeared. Very strange situation. No matter what we did to try to identify what was attracting them to our airfield, we couldn't figure it out. It wasn't shelter. That's a picture of what our airfield looks like. There's no shelter out there. This is a hot August day. There's no water out there, and if there was water anywhere here in Texas, they wouldn't have to come to the airport for it, right? They can go somewhere else. Going and walking out into those areas of the airfield, we could never identify food. All we could see is grass, trying to get through this hot Texas summer. Never could identify it, but we knew that there had to be a reason they were coming out there. So in 2014, again, we had decided we've had enough of this stuff, so we determined that, well, let's step up our efforts a little bit and let's take a different approach. Instead of going out and looking for what they were attracted to, let's look inside the birds and see if maybe what they're eating can lead to an attractant, a food source. So we unzipped some birds that were, yes, it's unzipping. We unzipped. Everybody done with lunch? I think I have a yucky slide coming up next. There it is. We unzipped some birds and collected. We were very surprised, first of all, to see that all these birds had only seeds in them, nothing else. We sent these seeds off to the Botanical Research Institute of Texas, and a botanist there identified the seeds. The seeds came from a plant that is known to be used here in the United States as soil stabilization. So somehow it got onto our airfield, and somehow these birds were eating it. At that time, it was still just speculation because we had not yet found or seen this plant on our airfield. So this was in August of 2014, so the following spring, the botanist who identified these seeds came out to the airfield with us, and sure enough, this plant was growing everywhere. The plant, the reason that we never saw it in August was because the plant is an early springtime plant that produces its fruits, its seeds, at the exact same time these pigeons were coming to our airfield. Remember I said birds are not stupid? They remembered it. They figured it out. They found where it was, and they came back to those areas of our airfield on a daily basis. And they knew when that food source was depleted, and let's go somewhere else to go eat. This launched a major, and you can see that, I wish I knew how to make this thing work. You can see where the activity levels, those are pigeon activity, peak in June and July, and it also correlates with the life cycle, life history of that plant. Cinched it. Totally cinched it, and this launched a year-long extensive botanical research project at DFW Airport. We figured, boy, if we never knew this plant was out there, what else can we learn? So we did. We learned a lot by not only collecting seeds and identifying what they were from unzipped birds, but also identifying what was growing out on our airfield with this botanist. And this launched a huge, first of all, aha moment. Oh my goodness, this is so cool. Not really in that it was so cool, but now we knew what was attracting mourning doves and pigeons, and now we knew what we could do about it. So we worked with the botanist, a vegetation management specialist, our grounds crews, and our airfield staff to coordinate an airfield maintenance program. That program was launched in February 2017, and after 1 year, pigeons, gone. Mourning dove numbers almost halved. Our total bird numbers are down too, and we think it's because of the program. Now, understand fluctuations in populations happen, but we really think that we're knocking down the lush vegetation that attracted those birds. So, very cool. I am looking forward to saying that I'm looking forward to the time when I can say, when I can go from the results look promising to here's the trend. We've proved it. We've done it. Looking forward to that. The really cool part about this is that we had some unexpected results from it, is that not only are we mowing less often, which means that we're attracting birds love vultures, hawks, and grackles, and not cowbirds, cattle egrets love the mowers because it stirs things up and they can find their bugs and everything. So they follow the mowers. Less mowing means less of that. We're also decreasing our frequency of the mowing, which means decreased fuel consumption, decreased emissions, decreased all kinds of stuff, making us better stewards of our environment. Happy to share that. Other partnerships we mentioned, I'm trying to hurry here because we want a couple minutes in case you have a question. The North Central Texas Wildlife Consortium. The information that we learned from that botany project, we're sharing with our consortium members. We all are growing the same kind of plants out here in this region. What else can they learn too? We've put together brochure for the public so that they understand why airports need fences and why their communities need to cough up some money to build a fence. Handbooks, and there's our botanist down there working hand in hand with our consortium members. We also do community outreach. I love these opportunities to share our program and share what other airports are doing too. We do a lot of career events, and if you can see this picture on the bottom there, we have the falconers there. That's kind of a trick. The falconers bring the people in, and then we talk to them. And that's it. Questions? Oh, really quick. If anybody has more interest in that botany program, I gave a TED Talk on it in Plano back in April, so help yourself.
So, Miles.
Going to blame, because every one of those damn birds that you get rid of over there flies over to our boat club on White Rock Lake and messes up the damn place.
Somebody always asks me, where do those birds go? And I always say Target. Now I know it's the boat club.
Out over the lake looks like an aircraft carrier, so they're happy to light there.
I'll be happy to share Roger's information or contact information, and you can hire him too.
Okay, so we're going to hire your falconer.
Okay. Yes.
Outside of renting a falcon, what are some of the things that just the everyday homeowner can do to discourage birds like egrets and grackles and things like that from coming around?
It's difficult. The question was, what can the average homeowner do to disperse birds and keep them from nesting and making messes and things, I'm assuming. If you can be diligent and if you can be more persistent than they are, going out there, making noises, doing clappers, climbing trees, whatever you can do. I mean, if you see birds in the springtime start to come in and you know that these birds are looking for a nesting spot, do what you can to disperse them. There's mylar tape that you can sometimes work, sometimes not. Again, birds are not dumb. I would think that you would have to mix it up quite a bit in order to prevent that kind of thing from happening.
Any other questions?
That now your career has made a turn and you're no longer practicing what you've been educated to do. And I think you got it wrong. I think you're absolutely
I'm
right.
applying opposite is what I meant to say. I'm applying the opposite.
You're still learning how these animals react, and you're just applying it differently. So I still applaud you for your efforts as a traveler, as an aviator. Thank you for keeping those birds away from ingestation of a jet engine. Thank you.
Yeah, all of the above. We try. Thank you. And yeah, to clarify, really what I'm doing is taking the knowledge, and I still do learn every single day, but taking the knowledge base that I thought I was going to use for something else and just kind of turning it around. The botanist and I, whenever we're doing field work, we both kind of laughed at that she and I are both doing kind of the opposite. Of she's out there loving plants and trying to figure out how to kill them. So I'm not trying to figure out how to kill birds. It's just, like I said, I love birds. The thing is the airport is not a safe place for them, and that's the important thing, is increasing safety for them and for us.
Great.
Thank you.
So, Kathy, in recognition and appreciation of your presentation today, we've made a donation to a longtime Rotary Club of Dallas and Rotary International initiatives for safe, clean water and sanitation, and our club's initiative to establish dental hygiene services in Ghana, Africa.
Nice.
This will forever change the lives of
Excellent.
many,
Thank you.
many people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
So, guests and members, thank you very much for attending. Those of you who are watching us, thank you for tuning in and watching this program. We hope you enjoyed it, and we'll come in person soon. Next week's meeting will be the Dream Team for Scholars Awards, and that will be here at the City Club. And now, if we will all rise, and let's recite the things that we wish all people would think, do, and say in their lives. First, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendship? Fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And number 5, very important to our club, is it fun? We are adjourned.